So, since I last recorded the video, One of Substance anyway, if you might remember, I did a live broadcast a little while ago. I've had quite a few comments, some nice, some not so nice. Last time when I did the live video, I wasn't particularly well, actually. I had a cold, and a couple of you were quite concerned, so thanks for that. But since then, I have been even iller. I've had COVID again for the second time, so I've had COVID twice now, plus 3 vaccines. But I have to say, I think the vaccines and exposure does work in that my most recent COVID, if it hadn't been for the fact that I tested, I would never have known it was COVID. I would have thought it was a very, very mild cold. The only symptom really was a little bit of a runny nose and tiredness. But I've had some other comments and questions. And a few of you tracked me down on Instagram. I generally don't advertise my Instagram or Facebook pages via here because they're aimed at consumers who come to me for photography rather than necessarily you guys. But if you want to say hello, please feel free to do so. I'll pop my Instagram handle on the screen, but I don't post that frequently, but I do read the messages and things. So somebody, I'm going to keep people nameless as much as possible. Somebody called Ian, that's fairly anonymous, but it is his name, sent me a message on Instagram asking if I was a full-time professional photographer or if I did other things as well. Yeah, I didn't really realise that people didn't realise this. Didn't realise people didn't realise this. How many realises in one sentence? Yeah, so no, I'm not. I'm not a full-time photographer. I have another business which I started when I was 22, 22-ish, 42 now, in case you care. And that basically pays my bills. So photography really is a passion for me. It is, I've ended up with a studio just as a sort of natural progression. When I started taking photography seriously and really got into people photography, I started taking family shoots for friends and family. Being somebody with a young family myself, I've got lots of friends with young families, and we used to do family shoots for them. So I would hire studios, and they provide all the gear, etc., for the UK anyway, for lighting and all that sort of stuff. And I would shoot in there. Did more and more of that sort of thing, got busier and busier with it, to the point that the preparing for the shoots, finding the studios, hiring the studios, transporting all my gear, transporting all the props and etc. was taking away the joy of doing the photos in the first place. And that's how I end up here in this little studio, which I'll give you a tour of in my next video, because somebody asked for that as well. See, I've got things set up, because it's actually quite small. It's only 550 square feet, but thankfully we're part of a bigger complex, so we don't have to provide toilets and things within the studio. But so, yeah, anyway, I digress. I totally digress there. So no, I'm not full-time professional. I shoot when I want to. I do it for the pure fun of doing it. Basically, start buying more and more gear, hiring more and more studios. It was costing me more and more money. And my wife basically said, would it not make more sense to find a small industrial unit like this and get your own little studio? So I shoot for money basically to support the studio. I'm not really that interested in trying to make a living for it, because my other occupation is more profitable, basically, if you look at time spent, etc. But that does mean I go quiet a little bit sometimes when the other job is busy. So the other job's in finance, and it's just been the end of the financial year in the UK, so I've been extremely busy doing that. So, next question. All right, so... Right, okay. I'm not going to name this person because I don't want anybody to have a go at them at all. I'm paraphrasing because the spelling is actually appalling. So, haven't posted a video in a while. I assume your studio's got up in flames since you dropped Pentax, and Sony just isn't working out for you. Hate to say, I told you so. Okay. Quite bizarre. I don't think any client who's ever going to come in really cares what camera you use. They only care about the results and the experience when they're having their photo taken. I'm still with Sony. My Sony gear has grown quite a bit. I'm going to do a few gear reviews soon, I think. Although I hesitate to do gear reviews in this channel, simply because I'm not actually that interested in gear. But they do get the views on the channel, how to build a channel. I'm more interested in photography and other people's photography, the work that people have done, finding inspiration, education, that sort of thing. However, I worry a little bit about making those videos because, for example, at the moment, I'm quite into Martin Scholler, and I'm trying to organise. I've got some inspiration from Martin Scholler, but I want to do something that's not quite him, but it's drawn inspiration. Definitely inspiration rather than imitation. But I would be concerned about using any of his photos in a video talking about his work and why it's inspired me, because I wouldn't want to disrespect his copyright. I'm well aware that I could probably use them on an editorial use basis, but I don't know, something about it feels a little bit wrong. But reaching out to individual photographers to get their permission, especially somebody of that stature who's not necessarily easy to get in touch with, is also a chore. So I'll give it some thought. I know some other YouTubers who do stuff on the art of photography rather than gear, etc. They will just run with it, and if they're asked to take it down, they'll take it down. And I may do that because I think the vast majority of photographers, unless you're saying they're crap, will not mind you talking about their photography. I don't think it's ever going to hurt them to be have their work discussed. Right, next question. Okay, this came from the comment section of another photographer's channel, a landscape photographer, and I made a comment on his channel suggesting something, discussing something he had done, which he was perfectly happy with and quite responsive to. And somebody else replied to that comment saying they'd seen my channel. I was just a Pentax gearhead, and obviously I'm not shooting Pentax anymore, who's never shot a landscape in his life, so why did I watch this landscape channel in the first place? I should keep my opinions to myself. That one was a bit of a yeah, that was a bit of a strange response to quite an inane comment about how yeah, the guy was doing some long exposure stuff, and I basically said long exposure and intentional camera movement have a similar sort of vibe for me. I didn't make any particular sort of major criticism or anything along that sort of lines. It was just a general banal comment engaging with somebody. Yeah, I do watch landscape photography channels. I'm interested in other photographers' perspectives. It doesn't really matter to me what the genre is. There's this thing in photography and in business, especially from the photography channels, where you'll get an awful lot of people who tell you need to niche down if you want to make your business successful. And yeah, it's probably true. The public generally want to deal with a specialist in everything. You know, it's like you go to your doctor, your GP might know what's wrong with you, but people are much more reassured if they get sent to the hospital and see the consultant. And I think it's true, people are willing to pay you more if they think you specialise in something. But that doesn't mean you can't have an interest in other photography. And in fact, if you're not actually trying to make your living from photography, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why you can't experiment with lots of genres. But having said that, I'm about to niche down my commercial work, my paid work, quite a lot coming up. And I'll tell you why, I suppose. Yeah, a bit of a rambling video this is becoming, but yeah. On my photography, I basically shot families, then I shot headshots, and then I started doing social media stuff. If you follow me on YouTube, you've probably seen quite a lot, not YouTube, Instagram, you've probably seen quite a lot of stuff that I did for a gym recently, and then I've shot some CrossFit competitions and that sort of thing, social media type stuff, content, did a few little reels, nothing great, really nothing great as far as the reels were concerned. They were sort of like afterthoughts. But anyway, yeah, what I found is over time I've spent that much time trying to keep the studio paying for itself, because I hate the idea of it not being sustainable and having to subsidise it out of my other business. That what I have done is I have gone here, there and everywhere. I've done a little bit of everything. And to be honest, at the minute, I'm feeling like the photography I enjoy the most is headshots. the paid photography I enjoy the most is headshots. But this jumping all over the place, doing a bit of everything for everybody, has resulted in me not having the time to work on my own projects, like the Martin Shuttle I think I mentioned earlier. It's made that a little bit difficult because you spend so much time marketing, so much time engaging with people, so much time updating websites and all that sort of shit. So, yeah. I'm going to start marketing my paid photography mainly for headshots at the minute because that's what I enjoy doing the most. Over time that might change, I might switch to something else, but it's probably easier to market one service. It's the most enjoyable. If you've watched the studio tour, which I'll put up after I've done this, then you'll see that my studio isn't massive. I can do family shoots in here, and that's in fact what I built it for. But headshots are much easier to set up and get going with, and I really enjoy the engagement that you get from headshots, particularly when I'm shooting actors, more than anything else. Right, okay. Other comments. Okay, this comes from Anna with one N. Now you've been switched to Sony for a while. I was a previous Pentax photographer myself, but I've recently switched to Sony. I only have an A7 III and a 51.8 Sony lens. I'd be interested in your perspective on what lenses, etc. you have bought and why, and how you found them. Will you be reviewing your gear? I think my gear reviews are pretty poor because I don't shoot charts, I don't analyse the chroma. I just talk about my experience with the lens, my feelings on the gear, and how it has or hasn't worked for me. Now I appreciate some people do particularly like that sort of review, so yeah, why not? Yeah, I'll do a couple of reviews on some of the gear that I've bought since I joined the Sony ecosystem. What have I got to review that I could review? I suppose I've got the Sony A7 III. I won't be buying a Sony A7 IV before you ask. I've got a Sony A7R IV. I've got the Tamron 17-28 f2.8. I've got the Tamron 28-75 f2.8. I've got the Tamron 70-180 f2.8. I've got a Takina 85 1.8. And I have the Sony 35mm f1.8. An interesting video might be about why I'm shooting 1.8s and when I used to always buy the widest I could possibly get. But anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, why not? I might do some gear reviews. I'm always conscious that I don't want this channel to become a gear channel. But yeah, they do get the reviews. If you look at my most watched videos, my review of my little Fuji camera, wow, that gets a lot of views compared to everything else on the channel. But anyway, I digress yet again. So, where are we at? Questions. Okay, could you please speak slower and maybe try and speak proper English? Okay, well, I am English, so my English is proper in that sense. I'm not Scottish, I am not Welsh, I am from the northeast of England. I was born in a town called Gateshead, which is on the south bank of the Tyne, opposite Newcastle, and I now live in a town called Houghton Spring, which is between Sunderland and Durham. And the accent you're hearing is generally referred to as the Geordie accent, which basically is the northeast of England gets tarred with everybody being Geordie, but actually Geordie means that you were born within sight of the Tyne, or raised on the banks of the Tyne, depending on how you want to look at it. So it's a Geordie accent. And will I slow it down and try to speak more clearly? I do try to speak clearly. I'm somebody who has always refused to lose their accent deliberately because it's part of my heritage. People of the northeast of England are very proud of where they're from. We're an industrial working class area. Our accent is part of our identity, and I won't eradicate it just to please somebody on YouTube. What I have done historically is I do speak slower on YouTube than I do in real life, believe it or not. What I have done is I have tried whenever I've got time to add subtitles to the videos. in English, so turn those on if you're really struggling with my accent. But it is my accent. It is who I am, and I don't really plan on getting rid of it for the sake of YouTube. I think that's all of the questions that I feel like answering today, to be honest. If you have any more, feel free to inbox me via Instagram or Facebook or wherever you can find me. And maybe I'll usually reply to you anyway, but maybe I'll cover the question in a future video. If I don't reply to you, it's probably because you were incredibly abusive and I've just blocked you, which does happen occasionally, but mainly on Facebook, to be fair. Okay, I'll speak to you soon. Take care.